severe weather season has arrived, which can mean threats from above and threats from below. What can we expect in central Ohio?
Protecting you and your family.
Once a storm hits, we immediately put our crews out.
Why there might be a delay before the lights come back on.
Tornado drills. During COVID-19, can students both be distanced and safe from strong winds?
Wear your mask. Try to social distance 6 feet as much as you can.
What your kids should know, whether they're at school or at home.
If we get nervous during storms, imagine how our pets feel.
Get out their tennis ball during a storm and see if we can get them playing.
Simple steps to ease their anxiety.
And grab that pen and paper. We have a checklist that could save you money and even save your life. Doppler 10 ahead of the storm starts now. Mainly just rain showers with
out of the southwest. Kind of a similar
as we head throughout the afternoon, morning, day, and night. We track storms minute by minute, live on air. We bring radar to you and zoom right into your neighborhood to keep you safe. Well, tonight we're changing things up a little bit. The Doppler 10 weather team is stepping outside of the weather center and into your world. We have practical advice for this severe weather season. How to prepare for high water, thunder, lightning, and yes, tornadoes. We'll explore what the pandemic means for your safety this spring, and we'll make sure you have the right tools for when the storm clouds arrive. We know the weather in central Ohio can change in an instant, and that's why we're always standing by, ready to guide you through it. But there are some pretty good clues for what to expect in the coming months. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, commonly known as NOAA, produces seasonal outlooks to help communities like ours better prepare for weather and environmental conditions throughout the year. For this April through June, warmer than average temperatures are favored for Ohio and most of the U.S., so I suppose that could be good news if you like the warmth. The precipitation outlook for spring also favors above normal precipitation for our state, so you can expect a rainier season contrary to the below average precip we have experienced so far this year. Hydrologist Greg Waller explains how the rain impacts localized flooding.
The short-term high-intensity rain events, will likely produce the usual minor flooding. Spring convective thunderstorms produce locally heavy rain. That could get the rivers responding.
So here's a look at the likelihood of flooding between now and May 2021. Yellow indicates minor flooding is likely in Ohio. But with that said, hydrologists are forecasting limited moderate flooding this spring and no areas with a greater than 50% chance of major flooding across the country for the first time since 2018. Overall, this flood year is not expected to be severe or as prolonged as the previous 2 years.
Severe weather season not only brings heavy rain, strong winds, and hail, it can also bring power outages. So how do the power companies ramp up for a severe weather event? And why might it take some extra time before your power is back on? I went to the experts for the answers.
When severe weather hits, trees can get snapped like twigs and power lines can fall, leaving crews scrambling to get the lights back on.
Once a storm hits, we immediately put our crews out and our assessors, which are technicians that will go ahead of the crews and figure out what they're going to need to make repairs.
But planning starts before the storm. American Electric Power has its own meteorologists and weather modeling to warn them about severe weather 3 to 4 days in advance.
And when it comes to severe weather, not all events are created equally. If you think about it, a tornado tends to have much more isolated pockets of damage, while straight-line wind events are that much larger, which makes them even more troublesome. Think back to the super derecho of 2012. That knocked out power for over 4 million people in the Midwest. Now, regardless of the event, trees are the number one problem the power companies face.
Trees are probably our largest enemy during that time because we can design our system, and we do design our system to withstand weather, but I can't design that tree that's planted next to my line.
AEP has up to 1,000 line workers it can call to restore power and can bring in more from around the country if necessary. It gets power back on for hospitals and nursing homes first, before moving on to essential services and eventually residential customers, which is where a little bit of patience can go a long way.
Safety is a big thing for us. So sometimes people may think we're moving a little slower than we should, but it's done for good reason. We want to keep our alignment healthy. We don't want anybody to go home hurt. We'd like to send home in same condition.
You just heard what happens during and after the storm, but there are some things you can do beforehand to stay safe. AEP Ohio suggests having flashlights and fresh batteries, battery-powered radios or TVs, as well as candles, matches, or lighters. If you have a garage door, make sure you have instructions for manually opening it, and keep in mind if you're using a portable generator, they can cause fires if you don't follow the directions. We spent our fair share of time in the sun last year, and that led to another unseasonably warm year, not only here in Ohio, but across the globe.
The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has ranked 2020 as the second hottest year on record next to 2016, despite having the cooler waters over the equatorial Pacific, or La Nina, during the second half of last year. The average annual temperature for the United States was 54.4 degrees, which is 2.4 degrees above the 20th century average, and is ranked as the fifth warmest year on record. Top 5 hottest years on record have also all occurred in the past decade. Climate specialists in recent years have warned that we are at a critical point in the fight against climate change.
We're not over the edge yet. We're not past the point where we can't make a better life for ourselves in the future. If we wait too much longer, it is going to be too late.
Not only are we seeing a rise in temperatures, but this is also leading towards wetter days and more downpours, which is also heightening flood risks here in Ohio. Within the last few weeks, the floodgate in Portsmouth along the Ohio River was activated for the first time since 2018.
A lot of folks around different parts of the county said that they were seeing water in places that they had never seen water before.
The high water levels closed the 2nd Street Bridge and prevented families from getting to their homes.
We're seeing more downpours because more than 70% of the planet's surface is water, and as the world warms, more water evaporates from oceans, lakes, and soils. And actually, every 1 degree Fahrenheit rise also allows the atmosphere to hold 4% more water vapor. So when weather patterns lead to heavy rain, there is even more moisture available for stronger downpours, increasing the risk and severity of flooding, according to Climate Central. Data analysis shows an upward trend in the number of heavy precipitation events in the vast majority of the lower 48 states since 1950. And of course, that's the same thing for us here in Ohio. And 2020 was actually the 6th wettest year on record, where we had 50.45 inches of rain. The first was set in 2018, and number 2 was set in 2011 for Columbus. Heavy rain leads to many inland flooding events. Topography, land use, levees, and dams also play a role.
While some of us are fascinated by severe weather, there's a good chance your pet is not. Coming up, how to keep them busy so they aren't scared of the storm. More kids are back in the classroom. The steps schools are taking to be storm safe and COVID safe during tornado drills.
Speaking of tornadoes, we are no stranger to these dangerous weather events here in Ohio. Last year alone, the National Weather Service confirmed 19 tornadoes were reported, with a significant outbreak on April 7th and 8th. And since records have been kept dating back to 1940, Ohio has experienced 1,203 tornadoes.
Tornadoes form when a thunderstorm has a particular combination of winds. Winds moving in different speeds and directions at different altitudes cause rising air to spin. For a tornado to form, there also needs to be spinning air near the ground. This happens when air in the storm sinks to the ground and spreads out, and if there is enough rising and sinking air, the air near the ground starts spinning and forms a tornado.
When you hear that tornado siren go off, it can be scary as you quickly put your plan in place and get to safety. But during this time of COVID, you also want to stay socially distant. And those are conversations happening in Central Ohio classrooms.
From the halls of schools to every Wednesday at noon, we are reminded to prepare for severe weather. The basics of storm safety are the same.
Remember to duck, D-U-C-K. D, go down to the lowest level, stay away from windows. U, get under something, such as a basement staircase or a heavy table or desk. C, cover your head. And K, keep in shelter until a storm has passed.
Schools in Ohio are mandated by the state to participate in tornado drills once a month during the spring. So how are students practicing these drills, but also staying socially distant?
Whatever they recommend, we'll try to do that as best as possible, but understand also in the midst of emergency, your mask is your best protection, because the biggest thing is getting your kids safe.
Other schools, like Olentangy schools and Southwestern City school districts, are hybrid, so they're able to have fewer students during the drills, with masks and social distancing still in place.
All of our buildings have tornado shelter areas. That's built into their safety plan.
The CDC recommends if you have to take shelter in a group setting to create family groups and limit interactions with people who are not in your family. If you're in a public area when severe weather moves in, still follow guidance to the nearest shelter.
Wear your mask. Try to social distance 6 feet as much as you can while you're in that area while that warning is ongoing.
And it's a good idea to practice that plan and how you'll socially distance with your family before a storm arrives.
We love hearing from the soon-to-be meteorologists in your home. Now it's time to help them get to the green screen. We have launched 10 TV Futurecasters, Mets in the Making, and we're answering your kids' questions, like what causes thunder and what are the different types of lightning? Plus, kids love experiments, so we're helping them create their own to show them how to make clouds and much more. Just go on to 10tv.com/futurecasters. Check it out, it's all free. Not all lightning is created the same. Coming up, we'll explain the differences so you know what you're seeing and explain how to protect yourself. And next, when your pets act up before storms, are they able to feel something is coming? We'll ask an expert. Thunder is caused by lightning. That's because lightning creates a hole in the air called a channel. And when the lightning has finished, the channel collapses, which causes the big noise we hear as thunder. Thunder and lightning always happen together, but you may not always hear thunder when you see lightning. That's because you can see lightning up to 100 miles away, but you have to be no more than 15 miles away to hear thunder. If you count the number of seconds between the flash of lightning and the sound of thunder, and then divide by 5, you'll get the distance in miles to the lightning. 5 seconds equals 1 mile, 15 seconds, 3 miles, and so on.
Lightning forms because of a charge separation in a cloud. Positive charges accumulate at the top of the clouds and negative ones at the bottom, and this can lead to intercloud lightning, which doesn't make it to the surface. If the separation is great enough, a negatively charged cloud-to-ground lightning bolt can form. Sometimes positively charged lightning can shoot far from the storm and strike in clear air. These are called bolts from the blue and show that thunder doesn't always happen when it rains, as the song would suggest.
There are times, even on beautiful days like this, where the weather changes in an instant, and the next thing you know, you're stuck under a thunderstorm. The honest truth is that there is no safe place outside when a thunderstorm is in the area. The only completely safe action is to get inside a safe building or vehicle. If you absolutely cannot get to safety, you can slightly lessen the threat of being struck by lightning with these tips. Avoid open fields or top of a hill. Stay away from tall, isolated trees or other large objects. And stay away from water and wet items such as ropes and metal objects such as fences and poles. Water and metal do not attract lightning, but they are excellent conductors of electricity. And if you hear thunder, you are likely within striking distance of a storm. Indoor shelter will always be your safest option. Just remember, when thunder roars, go indoors.
Some of our pets can get really scared during severe weather. You might notice them acting up or acting unusual. So what can dog moms and dog dads do to help calm them down? Well, there are a few simple steps. During the springtime, the weather changes in a blink of an eye. From blue skies to dark gray clouds, heavy rain, strong winds, lightning, and thunder. Most of the time, this isn't a surprise, but unfortunately, our pets can't be briefed on the weather days in advance like us, and these sudden changes may cause unwanted stress and anxiety.
They might chew a spot that's not itchy. They might do a wet dog shake even though they're not wet. They might go over to the corner and dig. Any of those can be done as a way to escape valve that nervous energy when they're anxious.
Dr. Lilly is an assistant professor clinical at OSU Veterinary Medical Center, and she says our pets can exhibit anxiety in many ways, from something like thunder or a loud noise.
Moving around really, really fast, or it could be being really, really withdrawn and being frozen. lip licking or tongue flicking. Yawning can also be another one when it's done out of context. If they're not getting ready for a nap or waking up from a nap, a yawn is probably a stress signal. And then facial features that don't look like that quintessential derpy dog that I described.
Thunder shirts can be used to help with pet anxiety.
Theoretically, they work like swaddling a baby or giving a hug, right? They're that sense of compression that is very frequently relaxing in a state of anxiety.
Studies on thunder shirts have shown that they work for some animals, but not all. If that doesn't work on creating a calm and playful environment for your pet.
Get out their tennis ball during a storm and see if we can get them playing. Because if they're busy playing, they're not busy having that negative, or at least as negative of an emotional response.
Just because your pet doesn't have anxiety from storms now doesn't mean they won't ever experience it.
There's actually a paper that looked at new onset of noise fear in dogs. And for dogs who are over about 4 or 5, it seems like musculoskeletal pain, so joint and bone pain, may actually contribute to new onset or worsening of noise fears.
Some dogs are also frightened by other loud noises, such as fireworks, but others are only afraid of storms. Another good idea is to reward your calm dog's behavior all year round.
It's not always the wind that makes trees fall. Coming up, what's happening underground that can have you running for cover. And keeping the cost down without sacrificing your safety. What you can grab tonight to protect yourself tomorrow.
Have you ever heard someone say, "It's about the storm, I can feel it"? Turns out that person might actually be able to predict the weather. We feel aches and pains in our bodies when there's a drastic change in the weather. Tendons, tissues, and other muscles in our body expand when there's a change in pressure, and that can cause pain in your body. These aches and pains can happen year-round and can feel worse in the colder winter months.
After a storm, the soggy soil can make it easier for trees to fall. When the ground is dry, a tree's roots are locked in place by the soil. But when the ground is saturated, it's easier for roots to move through the soil, allowing for the wind to push over those trees.
Wet ground doesn't only pose a threat to trees and their roots, it can also spell disaster when even a little rain is in the forecast. If you've ever wondered why a couple of inches of rain can lead to a few feet of flooding, there's a few reasons. For one thing, water flows from higher to lower ground, so excess water can fill up those lower elevations. And if the water falls faster than it can drain, you're also going to see it pile up, which will lead to more flooding. And if the ground is already saturated, then the rain won't properly infiltrate into the soil, just like a sponge that's full can't hold any more water. In fact, if the soil is infused with enough moisture, well, the runoff from it can be as bad as any non-porous surface, which just exacerbates flooding.
During the pandemic, Ohio's parks saw a surge of visitors, and that raises questions about water safety and pandemic safety. The Ohio Department of Natural Resources says it's important to remember, although it will warm up later this year, the water will still be cold.
You know, there's a water temperature and there's an air temperature. We always have a rule of thumb here with the Division of Parks and Watercraft that water and that air temperature does not at least combined total 120, then it's going to be very difficult for the general public to access the water without some type of layering. And a lot of times that layering in that clothing you have to wear is extremely expensive.
And as for keeping distance in the park, ODNR says don't forget your masks. Plus, if there aren't any open spaces in the parking lot, it's really best to find another place to go. Whether you're building a new home, remodeling, or simply preparing for severe weather season, there are science-backed tips to help. And with severe weather season approaching, now is the time to prepare. And it doesn't have to cost more than $40 and a couple hours of your time. First, start by closing your garage door and all interior doors to give your roof a fighting chance in high winds. If a window is broken by flying debris or a door has blown open, your house will rapidly fill with air. This will cause a dangerous increase in the forces pushing on your roof. Think of it like a balloon inflating inside your house. But rigorous scientific wind testing reveals that closing interior doors helps reduce the force on the roof by as much as 30%. The cost, $0. The time it takes, only a few minutes. Then make sure to tidy up outdoors and organize your garage. Items on the lawn or patio could become flying debris and damage your home. So think about storing patio furniture, garbage cans, and things like bikes and toys in your garage. Not to mention, parking inside it can prevent damage to your vehicle when hail is in the forecast. The cost, $0. The time it takes, possibly a few minutes to an hour. Next, locate and prepare a safe space. Being prepared will keep you safer in an emergency. Start by choosing an interior room with no windows on the lowest floor of your home, such as a basement or closet, and designate it as a safe room during storms. Then make sure it's always easily accessible. The cost, $0. The time it takes, only minutes. Most importantly, set up 3 ways to get weather alerts. It's vital to have an emergency system in place so you can react quickly. And you cannot rely on sirens as they cannot always be heard indoors. So follow 10 TV on social media and tune in to our local news often when severe weather is forecasted. Enable wireless emergency alerts on your cell phone via the 10 TV app. And purchase a weather alert radio that broadcasts emergency alerts from the National Weather Service, preferably one with a hand crank. These radios can alert you when you are sleeping and don't rely on electricity or cell service. The cost, less than $40 for a radio, and 10 TV alerts are free. The time it takes, minutes. And don't forget to create an inventory before a storm. Create a detailed list or video of your belongings in case an insurance claim is needed. It's also helpful to store your insurance agent's number in your phone so it's easily accessible after a storm if damage occurs. The cost, $0. We all want to thank you for joining us tonight. Remember, we've got your forecast 24/7 on air, online, and on the 10 TV News app. We'll be there so you're always ahead of the storm.